ONDC is going to kill Swiggy and Zomato, or at least, in my opinion, cut them off at the knees. So again, this is just my opinion. Pankaj and I are going to be having a debate today to try to figure out whether or not this is likely to happen. The reason why I think it's likely to happen is that this kind of thing has played out in the past with UPI, where there was a bunch of digital payments companies, basically e-wallets. You probably remember it better than I do because I was just there at the tail end of this saga. UPI suddenly showed up in 2017 is when it kind of got really big. And I actually dug up an article from 2018 talking about how UPI is killing e-wallets. So out of 100 transactions that were happening back in October of 2016, this was 2 months after UPI's launch, wallet to UPI transactions stood at 96 to 4. But then by March of 2017, wallet to UPI transactions was 36 to 64. So UPI had essentially taken over at that point. And now I would imagine it's probably 99 to 1 or 100 to 0. So the players at that time were MobiKwik, FreeCharge, Ola Money, PayU Money, PayZap, GeoMoney, Airtel Money, and Paytm. And I don't think, most of these companies we don't interact with today. At least I don't even on an annual basis. I don't touch any of these. The companies that I use for UPI specifically are Google Pay and PhonePe. Personally, I'm more of a PhonePe guy. I don't know about you. Are you on Google Pay, PhonePe?
Yeah, I use all of them.
Okay. Well, anyways, what we can see here is that in the past, there were a bunch of legacy companies that were playing, competing, and then suddenly government of India shows up, changes the game, and then now there's this whole new crop of companies that have replaced the pre-existing companies. And I think the exact same thing is going to happen in ONDC. That's my thesis, that there are existing players in this space, Swiggy and Zomato. They're going to be completely replaced by new startups that are ONDC native.
So first thing, I think that's too much in the future, right? First, we have to understand what's actually happening on ground right now. So ONDC is right now fulfilling 10,000 orders a day, and that's across the entire e-commerce sector. You have retail, you have food delivery, and every other service basically that you can think of. On the other hand, Zomato, for example, in just food delivery segment, it's delivering 1.8 million orders a day. So that's like tens of thousands of orders we are talking about, right? And even if one day ONDC does scale to that level, I think these companies will find a way to survive. You gave examples of wallets like MobiKwik who died, right? But you also have examples of Paytm who did survive, right? They found different products, right? Like insurance, like lending, and that helped them find a business for themselves. And I feel the same thing happening for Zomato and Swiggy in the food delivery base, right? Once this entire segment grows, you have so many new opportunities. Like you have restaurants will need someone to handle their tech, right? You have logistics. So I feel ultimately these companies should find their ground and that they'll make business for themselves.
I like the fact that you brought up Paytm because I think they're actually an example that proves my point, which is that they are not at all big in the digital payment space. PhonePe, Google Pay, those are the leaders. Paytm is a very small third player in that space. And the thing is that I think they did have the early mover advantage, right? They were the biggest company before UPI, but they weren't able to adapt. So why did this happen, right? Why did they fall by the wayside? I think the reason is that they didn't want to play by the government of India's rules. Just the same way that Swiggy and Zomato probably today are not really wanting to play by the rules. They don't want to get on ONDC, even though that's clearly the direction that the government of India is taking right now with all of e-commerce in the country. So what did that look like for Paytm? Well, they actually only introduced interoperability on UPI in January of 2020. And I personally remember this because at some point, I think it was like 2018, 2019, I switched. I was on Paytm. I actually did like Paytm quite a bit, but then suddenly someone told me about PhonePe. I think someone else told me about Google Pay as well. And I thought, wow, this is bank to bank. Whereas Paytm, I have to put money in my wallet. That's really annoying. But that was actually Paytm's moat. That was the thing that made them special, the thing that they were making money from. And they didn't want to give that up. There was something that they didn't want to give up that they were forced to once UPI got big. And the same thing is happening with Swiggy and Zomato, where they have this business model that they have, these commissions that they're charging. I'll talk a little bit about that later on, but that's how they make revenue right now. And that's going to be destroyed by ONDC. So if they move over to ONDC, they're going to lose all of that. Now, meanwhile, PhonePe, if you go and look at their website from 2016, you can see right here written on the website, never top up a digital wallet. Again, just link your bank account to PhonePe app and make hassle-free secure payments directly from your bank account 24/7. So they were on UPI from the beginning. They were UPI native. And I think that the companies who are on ONDC right now, the ONDC native companies, they're going to be the phone pays of this ONDC wave. They're going to replace the Paytms and the MobiQuicks. And in this example, it would be the Swiggies and Zomatos of the food delivery space. I just want to quickly dive into how these companies make money, Swiggy and Zomato, so that we can understand what they stand to lose if suddenly ONDC disrupts this entire space like I'm expecting that it will. Mainly, they're making money from platform services. What is a platform service? Well, it's any fee that they're charging a customer or a restaurant for their services, for using their app. So for example, for a customer, you might pay a delivery fee. That would be considered a platform service fee. You've also got restaurants paying commissions. So anywhere between 15 and 30% is what they're paying right now. 30% would be on the higher side, but like 20 to 25 is pretty typical. And then there's also advertising fees as well. So if you're a big restaurant, you want to advertise, you want to get more eyeballs on your restaurant, more customers, then you'll pay Swiggy or Zomato to advertise on their platforms. But then the fourth thing, and I think this is something that people typically overlook, is data. So information obviously is gold in 2023, and specifically for these companies, it's extremely valuable. And ONDC would it wouldn't remove the fact that they can get data, but it would also enable their customers and the restaurants to also acquire data because it's all democratized, right? It's transparent. And currently they hoard that data. They don't let restaurants or customers see the data that they've collected. And so that would also change quite a bit with ONDC. Now, besides data, there's one other thing that would really be disruptive for Swiggy and Zomato, and that's ONDC's commission. So currently the norm, the culture on ONDC for a buyer side app is that they'll charge a restaurant between 2 and 4% commission, whereas Swiggy and Zomato, like I said, is anywhere between 15 and 30%. So that's a huge difference. That's like the bulk of their revenue would disappear overnight if, let's just say in a hypothetical example, a Swiggy or Zomato decided to transition onto ONDC. That revenue just disappears. And so of course they can't do that. That would put them out of business because their expenses would be so high and their revenues would be so low that it just wouldn't be viable for them to continue existing as a company.
Yeah, I agree. Their revenues will be severely impacted. Yeah, but I think one thing that I don't agree with you is that ONDC is going to kill both of these startups, because that's not really the objective of ONDC, right? I want to quote Nandan Nilekani here. We are going to democratize e-commerce in India, and e-com won't be limited to few players. Everyone, every supplier, including kirana stores, grocery retailers, electronic retailers, small vendors, and restaurants should participate in digital marketplace on an open platform. So what I see here is ONDC is just a digital infrastructure, and companies like Swiggy and Zomato can come and build on top of that. And I think these companies realize that. Zomato, for example, is already public. Swiggy has decided that they'll go public in next 3-4 months. So what I see happening is public will ultimately force them to get on board ONDC because they don't want companies that they're investing in lagging behind.
I get what you're saying, but I think there's this imagined startup public company hybrid, and I think Dipinder Goyal also has the same opinion that they're a public company but they have a startup mentality. I don't really see that as a reality. I think that's just something that he's projecting, and he wants the world to see the company that way. I don't really think they operate that way. I think Swiggy might be closer to that because they're not a public company. But typically what I've seen is that public companies get stuck with this thing. It's called analysis paralysis, where they're too scared to move in any one particular direction because they're overthinking, because as soon as they make any even micro movement, the share price will go down or up. It'll fluctuate. It's volatile. The public is reacting. They're scared. So in a hypothetical example, if Zomato tomorrow said, hey guys, we're going onto ONDC wholeheartedly. The government has said that anyone who doesn't get on ONDC is going to be left behind. That's literally what's been said by ONDC in the past. And that does seem to be the direction that things are moving in. That's exactly what happened with UPI. So if they actually said that tomorrow, that we're moving on ONDC, I would really put money into this. I would bet money that their share price would go way down. And so that's why I think that it's going to take new blood in this space. Startups that are ONDC native, the same way that Google Pay and PhonePe, not that they were startups per se, PhonePe was more of a startup, but the same way that they jumped onto UPI and they were UPI native from day one, I think that it's going to take startups who are ONDC native from day one to replace and eventually dethrone these legacy players like Swiggy and Zomato that have been around for a really long time, let's be honest.
But I think before we imagine that doomsday scenario for Swiggy and Zomato, I just want to clear some air, whatever debate right now is happening on the price wars, that ONDC is so much cheaper. Some people are saying 50% cheaper, some are like even more.
You ordered food on ONDC, right?
Yeah, I tried ordering through Paytm and it was like around 35% cheaper. And we also made a reel which blew up. So I did some research on why there's so much price gap, and I found some very surprising details. So first, there's a 20 to 40% discount that seller-side apps are providing to customers right now, right?
Are they all deciding to do this on their own independently? Like they're just offering 20 to 40% to incentivize people to come on to ONDC and use their app?
Yeah, I think ONDC is right now asking them to do it so that they can attract more and more people right now.
But who's footing that bill of 20 to 40%?
So right now it's ONDC and its shareholders, which are different banks of India. They're giving these discounts so that more and more people can actually start using these apps. And I think other thing that we're overlooking is the entire logistics part of it. So currently these apps are not charging you any delivery fees, any packaging fees, right? I mean, someone has to pay the cost at some point of time, right?
It's also coming from ONDC and their shareholders?
Yes. And I think there's one more discount that ONDC is offering to the first time customer, a discount of 50 rupees. And that you can see in the order that I also bought.
And I think the misunderstanding that people are having with that 50%, 50 rupee discount is that that's going to be there forever, right? So they show a screenshot of their first order, but they don't show screenshots of their second order where that 50 rupee discount is not included.
Yeah, and once ONDC started taking down these offers, people actually started leaving ONDC, right? So what I'm saying ultimately is once you take all of this into account, the price gap really is not that much, right? And I'm quoting a senior executive at a seller-side app here that ultimately the difference between ONDC and other large e-commerce platform could be a maximum of 10 to 12%.
That's the difference in price?
Yeah, it's like, would you prefer paying 300 rupees for an order, but you have the guarantee you can track it on your screen, or you'll pay 270 rupees, but you don't know when will the order come, or
could be 3 hours, 3 days,
exactly
3 weeks.
Yeah. And I feel it's this trust and convenience that Zomato and Swiggy have earned up until now, and that will continue to pay at least for foreseeable future.
Foreseeable future, yes. But if we think maybe 1 or 2 years down the road when ONDC is a little bit more mature, a little bit more developed, and these growing pains that we're seeing where it might be 30 minutes, it might be 3 hours, 3 days, those things will be over and done with, I think, within a year or two. And then we're going to start to see people actually falling in love with ONDC. And of course, the early players there in that space, the companies that are there now, going through these growing pains and working with ONDC, reporting problems, bugs, issues that people are having. Those are the companies that are actually going to be very well positioned in the future. So I wanted to go through a couple of those companies just so people understand who's going to end up replacing Swiggy and Zomato in my thesis here. So we have one, which is Magic Pin. Then there's also Paytm, and they call their app a super app. I just call it messy and bloated because it's really hard to find anything in there, but there is a place deep inside of this app somewhere where you can order food through ONDC. There's also Pin Code. That's a recent endeavor by PhonePe. And then we also have My Store, which you and I experimented with back in 2022. And we tried to order these Diet Cokes, and the same thing happened. It took about a week for those Diet Cokes to reach, even though it was from a store that was like literally around the corner.
And we actually ordered 2. We received only 1.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I didn't remember that. And then there's also Crafts Villa, and they're mainly into crafts, handicrafts, handmade stuff, but for whatever reason, they also offer food from restaurants near you. So that's one of those weird things about ONDC is that because it's sort of very democratic and anybody can show the items and the restaurants and the stores that are listed on ONDC, it ends up being the situation where you might have a buyer side app that's offering handicrafts and saris and woodwork and also happens to offer pizza and stuff like that.
And I think it's this decentralized version of ONDC that these companies are going to use to sort of get their share back, right? They can have their buyer side app, they can have their seller side app.
You're talking about companies like Swiggy and Zomato?
Yes. And they can have their own logistic fleet, right? So Swiggy, for example, has invested in a startup called Urban Piper, and they are a restaurant management platform, right? So what I see happening is as more and more of these platforms come online, they would want someone to take care of their tech, their payments, and everything related to that. And I think Swiggy and Zomato will do that. Yeah,
I see the same thing happening with Zomato as well, where they've actually invested in Magic Pin. They own 16% of the company, and Dipinter Goyal is one of the directors on their board as well. So you're right. I mean, they are making these, not that Swiggy has invested at all in ONDC. Urban Piper is not on ONDC as far as I know, but that could be one strategy for them to get involved with ONDC without actually completely shifting their entire platform onto ONDC. They can sort of take the best of both worlds. They can enjoy being this premium platform that everybody still remembers from the good old days before ONDC, and they can also invest in building up these different components on ONDC as well. That's very possible. So based on all of that, I'm going to make a prediction here, just for the sake of seeing if I'm right or wrong in 5 years, what actually ends up happening. I think that one of those 5 companies that I mentioned earlier, those ONDC native companies, they're going to be the leader. They're going to be number 1. They're also going to be number 2. 2 of those companies will be there. Probably the rest of them will die out. They'll, just like the same way that we saw with the food, I call it the food fights. Back in the day, food tech companies, Tiny Owl, Hungry Panda, right? What was it called?
Food Panda.
Food Panda. Hungry. Whoa, there was a hungry one too, right? Hunger Box.
Yeah. Hungry Hippie. There's one of that.
Hungry Hippie.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't around for that. Uber Eats, right? There was a couple of these companies, and a lot of those companies actually ended up getting kicked out of the food fight. They lost the food fight, and Swiggy and Zomato took over. Now they're the market leaders. Same thing's going to happen in ONDC. Two of those 5 companies will be leaders. Then on the 3rd place, just like Paytm is a legacy player that survived the UPI boom, I think Zomato is going to be at number 3 because they've invested in Magic Pin. They obviously see the potential. Dipendra Goyal is keeping a close eye on this. He's the director on their board. That makes sense to me. Swiggy is going to be the company that gets kicked out of this race. They're not going to be here in 5 years. Swiggy will be a shadow of its former self. That's my prediction. Do you have a prediction? I'm curious to know what you think is going to happen in the future.
Yeah, I think at least for the food delivery space, they are still going to be there because we have spent last many years ordering food from Swiggy and Zomato, right? And once they get on board ONDC, I think, why do we need some other app to order food, right? We'll just continue to use Swiggy and Zomato,
but it's going to kill their business. That's what I'm saying. They're going to lose all their commissions. They're going to lose their data. All of these benefits that they're enjoying right now is going to be...
But they don't have any other choice. They'll have to do it.
Okay. Well, that's why I say they're going to be shadows of their former selves, and they're going to be usurped by...
They'll find new things in food delivery, right? They'll find some personalized thing. They'll find some healthy subscription, right? They'll say, okay, we are introducing a new feature 3 times a day, some good nutritious food for you, and we have our own nutritionist and stuff like that. So Swiggy and Zomato can do that.
Yeah. You got some good ideas, hey? you should go send your resume. Hey guys, I've got some ideas for you.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hope you guys enjoyed this new format. I don't know. Let us know if you enjoyed hearing this sort of debate that we had, sort of case, we're calling it, what do we call it? Case study debate?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Thanks for watching.